Good afternoon, everybody. This is Questions You Never Thought You Could Ask in Church. Thanks so much for tuning in today. This is the podcast where we talk about all things God, Christianity, Jesus, the Bible, religion, and spirituality. And the way it works is simple. We invite you to text your questions in because we bet you have them. We bet you have big questions about God, questions you think are simple about God, questions you might be embarrassed to ask about God, questions you actually might be afraid to ask about God because you think you're going to be judged or you have been judged for asking something like this. A lot of times I find people don't even know where to go with their questions. Well, what this podcast is about is texting them in and we discuss them out and hopefully can help steer you through some of the questions you have. Pretty simple way to do this. Just text to 815-314-0363. Again, that's 815-314-0363. If you're joining us on 216 The Net, welcome. Glad to have you here. If you're joining us on Facebook, you can post your questions right in the feed, either through 216 The Net's feed or Fellowship of Faith's feed. So, Andrew, Steve, how you guys been?
Good. Steve looked very interested during your intro.
I know. He's, eight levels deep.
Like,
I
could
care less about that intro. No, I mean, you just go on autopilot sometimes when you're listening to things, because I've heard that so many times now. It's like we've been doing this for 10 years, but we haven't. So anyway, what are we talking about today? Because we were just talking about the movie, the Jesus music.
Yeah, the Jesus music. It's on Hulu. It's on Prime, you said.
It's on Prime. Andrew hasn't seen it. Kent
seen
hasn't seen it. Dave and I have seen it. Dave sent me a text, interestingly enough, on a Monday, which typically I never hear from you on a Monday.
No, I kind of dig myself into a hole.
It's the day after.
Covered.
It's rest. It's the day of rest for you. So anyway, watched it. It's great. But we were still having this whole conversation as far as like what churches deem appropriate for what music is appropriate for worship. Mm-hmm. And it's still such a battle out there within churches, even though we're in 2022, like what's appropriate and what's not. So anyway, if you have any, like, what was kind of cool was where the musical influences from that Jesus music, like the Christian artists that were in there, what were their influences? Because a lot of them weren't Christian artists, of course. So it's like, okay, so anyway, if you're a Christian music listener, what were your influences, or what do you still listen to? Like, chime in. Mm-hmm. Be interested to know. Who do you listen to, Andrew?
There's
outside of the Christian realm.
Oh, outside
secular,
of the Christian realm?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know that I can come up with names.
Wow.
I don't know.
He's so Christian.
It's interesting. If I go on my Spotify, it like the only thing it suggests for me is like emotional music, like slow acoustic stuff. So apparently that's what I like.
Yeah, he's very emo.
So you in the bubble bath at night with some candles lit.
Exactly.
Some chanting.
I'm like, I don't know. I go through phases. Like now that it's spring and summer warming up, it'll be more like upbeat rock. Mm-hmm. Sometimes just like rage music. But the winter bands is just like, we're gonna mellow into the winter and like huddle
like
down.
Folk acoustic all the way.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Hibernation mode.
Exactly. So
I'm
looking forward to it.
You know who I enjoyed in that documentary is a guy I knew nothing about, but was Larry Norman. I don't know if he was ever on your grid or Kent. If you ever knew Larry Norman, but I mean,
he's not on my grid.
Andrew, not your time. No, and they sampled a few of his things, and again, it's of the era and stylistically not where I'd be.
Right.
But what I liked so much is listening to this guy who is truly like a pioneer, and what I'd call a prophetic pioneer in the movement, where almost when I say a prophetic pioneer, his lyrics had that same prophetic edge that the Old Testament prophets had, that Jesus certainly has, that is rejected by religious people over and over again, generation after generation after generation, and seeing some of that journey. Never knew the guy.
Yeah, I didn't know.
That was wild.
But his statement that he said was like, I often feel the same way as so his statement was, I'm too Christian for the secular realm, but I'm too secular for the Christian realm. So he's caught in the middle, and I guess I identify with that.
Yeah, I think a lot of
especially when it comes to music, right?
Yeah. No, exactly. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about how his lyrics and music is being received, and what the venues are for it.
So if you don't know, one of the bands that was highlighted in there was Dave's favorite. It's on his playlist, Striper. They wore black and yellow Bumblebee kind of looking spandex.
I still have a pair, that I wear around.
I can't wait to see you at that concert. So the Vixen, they're coming to the Vixen here in McHenry.
Yeah, September 17th.
And we're all going to go.
We're totally going, yeah.
I got to wear a wig, I think. We should go all out for this. Absolutely. Like, this needs to be a social event.
Who has like an old RV that we could paint with the yellow and black stripes on it, put that big gumball light? Yeah, you got it.
You know, remember the song No Rain by Blind Melon? Had the little kid dressed up in the bumblebee costume. I think if I put on spandex, that's exactly what I would look like.
Like, who's this child with you?
Who's the plumpy little fat kid? He loves bumblebees. Don't mind him. Anyway,
well, we've got a deep inbox today.
Yeah.
You know, we've been doing a lot of themed shows lately, bringing guests on. Last week we had Christopher Whitby with us last week. And,
that was good.
Talking a lot about, just institutional church, organized religion, and the love-hate relationship that I think a lot of us have with it. But
good guy.
Yeah, really good guy. Yeah. Good guy. So if you missed it, check us out on Spotify. You might want to pick that one up. But the questions have been coming in, and there's really kind of a, I feel like I'm giving a Jeopardy category right now, but potpourri. You know, it's it's totally this like eclectic mix.
Questions that start with the letter Q.
Yeah, right. All right. That's the theme for next week.
Real quick, Brent Peakenschneider, who is from our old church in Lincoln, Nebraska, goes to Christ Lincoln. He says Talking Heads is the band I've been listening to. So good. They are good. I love the Talking Heads. And nice to have you on the show, Brent.
I'll give a shout out to Chris here too. She says, "Are the Beatles still a thing?" And I got to give a yes, absolutely, because my 15-year-old daughter, that's her favorite choice of music. That and her two favorite T-shirts are a vintage AC/DC and a vintage Metallica T-shirt.
Now, vintage or
like air quote
or
vintage?
Walmart.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
So replicas.
Replica.
Okay. Replica.
Vintage replicas.
Yeah. Better put. Thank you for the catch. There is a vintage T-shirt shop that, believe it or not, just opened in Hebron, though.
Oh.
Yeah.
I only say that not to knock her, because I've got a couple of them from Walmart. Johnny Cash.
Yep.
Man in Black.
I don't need to get a shirt that someone wore and sweat in for like a decade and a half and like spend 8 times as much. Walmart is working just fine, you know?
It's like if you buy clothes from like a thrift shop or something.
Yeah.
There's no amount of washing to get that smell out of it.
No. Yeah.
No matter what you do.
It's hilarious that you say that, though, because Barbie, like, if you ever get Barbie on the dance floor, you no longer exist. Okay. So like, it doesn't, she'll want you out there first. And then all of a sudden she gets into this mode. Like, you can't control her. You can't stop her. You cannot talk to her. But anyway, loves New Order. Remember New Order? The band New Order. So that was her favorite band. So I thought for her birthday, I would get her this New Order shirt. I went to the thrift store, Andrew, got the shirt, washed it, and then I was going to frame it. So I framed it up, you know, and then put it by the album and stuff.
So you got a shirt she could never wear?
She would, right.
Okay.
And it's like, what an idiot. Like, she's going to hang this on her wall.
Yeah, over the mantle.
Yeah, because she loves New Order so much.
Yeah.
Dumb. Hey, it was a thought that counts. It got ruined in our 2 floods back to back. Our house flooded twice, backed up with sewage. So 12 inches of standing poo. It's great.
Yeah.
It makes you purge. So, you know, we weren't storing on.
Get rid of a lot of stuff.
Anyway, let's go to the show.
Well, I have a controversial Beatles opinion. I hate the Beatles, but
like at a personal level, did they offend you deeply in some way?
I hate
Beatles?
the sound of the Beatles.
But like what? From what era?
All of it. I just can't stand their voices.
Oh.
But I love their music when other people do it.
Okay.
So like the music is good. I just can't stand them performing.
Something about their voice. Yeah.
But yeah, any covers of it, I'm like, oh, this is a good song. I'm like, wait, it's a Beatles song?
I listened to the best metal cover last night, and I don't even know who this guy was, but he did Freebird. And Freebird's a long song, but if you do it in the metal version, it speeds everything up. So it was like 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, right. It's 12 minutes.
I had the patience for it, and he did phenomenal.
Yeah.
So good. So then I was thinking, okay, Freebird, how could we tie that into Pentecost? How could we cover it for Pentecost? But
Freebird, yeah.
Read through the lyrics.
Right.
Doesn't work.
No. All right. Shoot.
So anyway, if anybody wants to rewrite lyrics of Freebird, we'll cover it and do the metal version. Because you said we were going to do them. There was someone out there that wanted to do a metal
Sunday. Yeah.
We can make it work. Pull in some Striper, you know.
You got it. Yeah.
You need good metal.
So we do have a weird cross section of questions, I would say. There's some that like are still left over from Holy Week, some that are before that even.
Yeah, we've been accumulating. It's time to purge here too. We're gonna have we're gonna have a flood here.
Holy Week seems like a year ago.
Get through some of these questions.
I know, it was only 2 weeks.
I know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So if the law is meant to be our air quotes teacher until we're old enough to understand on our own, then what do we do when we come across difficult questions? Do we go back to our teacher for answers, or are we supposed to come to our own conclusions and hope we get the right answer?
Yeah, great question. You always come back to the teacher. I think of athletes who always come back to the fundamentals. I mean, there's those classic Vince Lombardi quotes of, gentlemen, this is a football with the NFL team. But truly, I mean, there's this idea that you never stop working on the fundamentals. And so, yes, we are supposed to mature in such a way that our lives are so in tune with the Spirit that we just so instinctually and intuitively live by the way of God. The reality is we're fallen human beings. So coming back to the Bible again and again and again to guide us is exactly what we need to do to keep, that skill set strong, if I can put it that way. Yeah.
So you're saying we will never lose the law?
Well, let me push this back at you. It depends how you're defining the law. Because the way that I'm taking the law is I'm taking it in the way, and by the way, the law is used in different contexts to mean different things in Christian Judaic writing. And even in the Bible, it'll mean one thing at one place and can be used in another way, like 2 verses later. Sometimes it refers specifically to the Mosaic law. Sometimes it refers more broadly to the first 5 books of the Bible, what's called Torah, which gets translated law. Other times it's refers to the entire Revelation, Scripture, counsel of God, or Old Testament, if you will. And that's the way that I'm using it today, where you're constantly coming back to the teachings of Jesus. You're constantly coming back to the exhortations of the prophets. You're constantly coming back, and I would even say to the Mosaic law, not that you're bound by it, but it still is a revelation, a guide, and a window into truth that, while even if not being something we follow literally today, still has insight into how to think about how God wants us to live.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So do I need to know Greek to really understand the Bible?
Yes.
I'd say Hebrew and Greek.
Hebrew and Greek.
McHenry teaches that.
Yeah, they do.
County College.
Yeah. So you believe this? So like
Maybe.
My son Ben, he's graduating high school in a couple of weeks here. He's going to Valparaiso, which is a Christian school, or at least a name.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And they just canceled their biblical language program.
What?
Like, we were literally there on a campus visit day. We put the deposit down. He's accepted. I mean, they gave him a really nice package. It was a great fit for a variety of reasons, because he wanted this engineering thing, but he wants to go to seminary someday. Couldn't sustain it anymore. They're just like, people aren't enrolling. So he's got to find like some theology prof who wants to kind of, what do they call it? Independent study it on the side. But yeah, it kind of took him out at the knees a little bit.
Yeah, because usually, typically most people that go to seminary, they'll take some sort of biblical languages in college and then just test out of it at seminary, so you don't have to take it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why don't you apply to become a school yourself?
Yeah.
Ben pays you, takes out a college loan. That debt relief gets abolished up to $10,000, evidently, possibly. And then you pocket the money.
Now you're thinking.
Gadini's are rich.
Devious.
Just by teaching language.
Where is Ben getting the money?
Oh, it's student loan.
Oh, okay.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Gotcha. So you just need to become an accredited university on your own.
Yeah, there you go. I wonder.
It's very specialized.
What's DAV stand for?
Dave. No, to the question though, do you need to know Greek and Hebrew to understand the Bible? Not at all. Some of the best illustrations or analogies I've ever heard for how the original languages of the Bible function is compare it to watching something in high def or 4K as opposed to watching something in a standard like old 4:3 format TV from the 90s. It's not like you're discovering some new doctrine or some hidden teaching of Jesus or some radically different way of approaching. It just kind of brings things into sharper relief sometimes. It opens up possibilities sometimes that you would miss through an English translation, but nothing in terms of the fundamental teachings of Jesus or the nature of being able to relationship with him or live in the way he calls is going to be, shall we say, impeded by lack of knowledge of an original language.
Well, and you had Acts, right? So they were all hearing in their own language, right? What other languages besides Greek and Hebrew? Hebrew. That's another one.
Hebrew. Yeah, Hebrew. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. What other languages?
Yeah, you talking biblical languages or of the era?
Well, just of the era.
Oh, I mean, of the era. I mean, Greco-Roman Empire or Roman Empire. You're going to have hundreds of dialects and languages that survived in their native form. But of course, you have Latin as the Roman language. Greek still is what they call the lingua franca, or the language of the empire. That's kind of like how English functions in the world today. Right. Hebrew really was only probably known the way that Latin is known today. Your average guy off the street, your average Jew off the street, it's questionable whether they knew Hebrew at all. Right. To the point that when you look at the New Testament and it makes quotes of the Old Testament, it quotes it from the Greek translation called the Septuagint, and not as you would expect it to be from the Hebrew original. So it's even questionable if all the biblical authors, New Testament biblical authors, were that versed in Hebrew. I'm sure they had memorized phrases and a little bit of familiarity, but Aramaic would be more of the common Jewish language in the time of Jesus.
Kind of the point that I'm making here is that I don't think God would have set it up that said, hey, you have to learn Greek or Hebrew in order to understand what I'm saying.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I love the biblical languages. I have found edification in knowing them. I actually find connection with God through them. But to say that you have to know them, that's my journey. Right. Nah. Read the Bible. Whatever your native language is, soak into it in a good translation. And you will find people with that level who have far closer relationships with God sometimes than people who are experts in, 1,000 tongues.
Right. Now with translations, do you think are there bad translations to avoid? Because one I always heard growing up was The Message. This is not a good translation to read. It's not God's word even.
People love to hate The Message, and I've never quite got it. I love The Message. I think it's fantastic what Eugene Peterson did with it. And to this day, I'll read things in The Message that will bring insight and clarity to me that I use to supplement what I'm reading otherwise. I think maybe in part among those who are fair-minded that have been critical to it are as such because it is debatable whether you would call it a translation. And the only reason I say that, it kind of rides in a gray zone.
Because it's not a direct.
It's not a direct, and there's always a certain amount of elasticity in translation for how literal you can get. You're trying to get the intent of the author. Eugene Peterson very clearly says, I am taking some, my interpretive approach in this. And it's a good interpretive approach. But he will follow that to bring clarity to people today, as opposed to trying to keep maybe sometimes a nebulousness that would exist in the original language. So you're certainly getting that approach. But I mean, I would just push back on if someone's using a study Bible, they're actually doing far worse in taking an interpretive approach than Eugene Peterson ever had. So I always encourage people, read what works. If this is where it's understandable, read it. And the deeper you get in, I always encourage people to use another one alongside The Message, but that's only if you're really critically going into a passage.
Well, and
or something like that. Yeah.
If they had a problem with the Message translation, then what you're kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're kind of saying is that it's kind of like what a pastor does on a Sunday morning.
It's exactly.
He's reading scripture, studying scripture, and then speaking to you as a congregation. Here's what God's saying through this. And you're teaching alongside.
Except he's doing it so much shorter than all of us that get up and yap for 40 minutes do. Because
it's still much longer than any of the direct translations.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. If you've ever listened to some of the interviews with Peterson, he'll even write about it in the intros of certain hard copies of The Message, where he'll talk about this actually birthed out of his own pastoral ministry. He was just realizing, he'd get up there and give the gospel reading or give the epistle reading. And, we've all seen it. We've all lived it. The glazed look goes over your head. There's a certain sense of just formality in the language, and no one's actually connecting with it. So he just started paraphrasing it and elaborating on it and kind of giving his own spin on it. And then the guy knew Greek and Hebrew. I mean, he knows the Bible well. And it kind of took off, and he got done going through a book this way. He's like, people are asking, can you do another book that way? And it just grew. And then he finished the New Testament and the Old Testament. Man, I love that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People find anything to complain about.
Yeah. By the way, I can give a quick shout out here. If anyone is in the McHenry area, McHenry, Illinois, northwest side of Chicago, and really into this Bible translation thing, a few weeks ago, we had Andrew Doss on the show.
Dr. Andrew Doss.
Dr. Andrew Doss. Dr. A. Andrew Doss, right?
Got to get them all right.
Yeah, but he's a professor at Elmhurst University, but he was on the translation committee for the Christian Standard Bible, the CSB, which used to be the Holmes Christian Standard Bible, or the HCSB, or is it Holman? Holmes? I don't know. The H is gone, regardless. But oversaw like 80% of the translation work on the New Testament. And he's coming out to Fellowship of Faith on Wednesday, May 18th, 6 o'clock at night, to do a 2-hour seminar just on how the translation process works and look at differences between translations, field questions. Good stuff. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
super. Yeah, absolutely. It was great to have him on the show. Just the amount of knowledge that he has.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I feel like we just got started and it was like,
I know.
You know,
you're like, can we do a 3-hour show?
Right. Right.
I don't know. How about that, Kent? 3-hour show?
3-hour show, Kent?
Yeah, we've got nothing going on in the afternoon. Just
Perfect.
settle in, and let's go to work.
24-hour marathon. You know,
That's
like,
right. Yeah. Roll the numbers.
Perfect. Let's see. If Jesus had scars on his body post-resurrection, can we expect to have scars and imperfections on our bodies post-resurrection as well?
I love this question. Thank you so much for asking. And
only if they're meaningful.
And actually, Steve, I'm kind of with you.
Yeah.
Every scar has a story, though. It's all
right. That's why
right?
Well, maybe
not. Yeah.
I'm going to stay away from the term imperfection. I know the way that it's being used here, and I understand that. Whether our bodies are going to carry just like the knee surgery scar from ACL work, or you know, the stitches that I got like when I got smacked in the face or something like that, whether our bodies are going to carry that, I don't know. Certainly it talks about the new creation as something that's beyond decay, that's beyond pain, that's beyond all of these types of things. So I'm not going to go down that path. But what's significant about the scars, particularly with Jesus in his hands and feet, is that these are now trophies. This is something that has glory behind it in the new heavens and the new earth, or in the resurrected body, because it's a testimony to what he suffered for God during his life that now carries through as a symbol, if you will, or a visible mark. And so I think that while people will not be crippled or something like that in the resurrected body, nonetheless, I think it's going to be something very akin to Jesus, where those who have suffered physically for Christ's name will bear those marks. But just like much like 12-year-old guys get like around someone who has a scar today going, oh, that's awesome. I mean, this is going to be a sign of wonder. It's like wearing the medals on your chest if you're in the military, so to speak. So maybe, depends on the context, but that's what I think's happening there with Jesus, among other things.
Want to hear a story about a scar?
I want to hear about your scar, Steve.
Okay.
Is this about your scar?
Yes. Do you see this little right here? So for those of you
everyone
that aren't
listening
watching on
sees
video,
it too, you know, beautifully. Yeah.
There's a scar on my head, and it happened because Phil and I one day, Phil Grimpo, who owns Inspire Media, Andrew and I used to work with him at our old church. Anyway, we were building a 20-foot sign to hold, or a frame out of PVC to hold up a banner for the band when we would go out. And so all of a sudden we got our 10-foot piece, another coupler to go up another 10-foot. The 10-foot piece of top slid out, fell down, hit me on the head. And it shocked me a little bit.
Yeah.
It feels like, okay, let's go. And I'm like, where are we
going?
What are you
talking about? Yeah.
He's like, you have blood spurting from your head right now. So anyway, that's my scar. So I wonder if that scar will remain with me in heaven because it was for the glory of God.
What are you hoping for on that one?
I don't want it.
Let it go, huh?
Yeah,
well, the question is, will
I have hair?
Will your hair be back or not?
Will I want hair in heaven? No. No, I'm done with hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a pain.
So what about after the transfiguration? I just had this thought, because that was Jesus kind of revealing
his inner glory, so to speak. Yeah.
Did that heal like his scars then, like those imperfections? I don't know.
You know, it's
probably not mentioned.
It's a great question, and it's purely speculative at some level. when we talk about the transfiguration, we're talking about this instance that you can read in the Gospels where Jesus takes a couple of his disciples, 3 of them, up on a mountainside, and he's revealed in all his glory. They could finally see behind the veil of humanity, so to speak, that Jesus truly is, but his divinity starts like busting through the seams. And, you know, that was always part of Jesus. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like he graduated into something. It wasn't like that was bestowed on him. That was something, a part of him and in him, so to speak, from the beginning. So I don't think it would have any restorative effect in that way, because then that would be the course of Jesus' entire life, which clearly is not what happened.
Yeah.
You know, he grew, he suffered, he got sick, he faced physical weakness, he faced hunger, he had emotions, you know, everything that is akin to being truly human was a part of him without a, shall we say, automatic like Wolverine regeneration thing that would just boom, kick into gear or something like that on him. So
I'm imagining like at the transfiguration, just beams of light coming out of the like nail holes in his hands. I think that's where it would start.
So
like
are you talking about the same thing? Because the transfiguration's before he's crucified.
Ooh. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, all right. Yeah, see, where I'm going is like he's with Dad in the carpenter shop, you know, and he like cut off like one digit on a finger, like you know, smacked the hammer, or
whoops,
you know, dropped a rock on himself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Clearly, my timeline is off.
All right, chew on that one.
Well, but not necessarily because he's eternal. So,
that's a cop out, man.
Okay. I'm just trying to help a brother out.
Guys outside of time.
Well,
next week we'll be going through a full timeline of Jesus' life.
It's gonna be a long one.
I'm sure one of the books has it out of order. We'll figure it out. There's another one about kind of heaven and people in heaven. Are people in heaven all the same age? Are there babies, children, elderly, or is everyone an adult?
What I suspect is meant by the same age is, are they all at the same level of development?
Yes.
Because that could be taken a couple of ways. Like, are you fossilized into the age you die? So like, I died at 9 months old, I'm forever like a 9-month, you know, infant. Or does it mean when we get there, we're in some kind of homogeneous state of like at 28 years old or something like that? Mm-hmm. And so I'm assuming that what they're talking about is development, not like how many years did you live before this? It doesn't say. Yeah, it's an unanswered question. I think it's very odd to kind of assume that somehow, like, if a baby dies and is in heaven, that he's forever an infant in the new heavens, new earth. I think it's also wrong to assume that aging does not happen in the new heavens and new earth. And I'm going to talk that way instead of what we think of as heaven today. The analogy that I like to use comes out of Genesis, the early chapters of Genesis, where you saw this extreme aging in those early people. You have like Methuselah, who was 969 years old. I mean, you have, you know, Noah, who was 600 years when the flood came around and had, you know, a bunch more to go. You know, they were living these multi-hundred-yeared existences. And you don't get the sense that they were like these withered, shriveled human beings at 90 just lingering on life support. And I think that J.R.R. Tolkien actually captures this pretty well when he describes the elves in The Lord of the Rings. Because in his mythology, the elves can be slain, but they don't die. And so you have like Lord Elrond in Fellowship of the Ring, who's 3,000 years old. And he looks like what we would think of as maybe a 50, 55-year-old man, but still a 50, 55-year-old man with energy, life, vigor, and yet the wisdom and experience of 3,000 years behind it. Again, speculative, but I think it's reasonable speculation as we think about what our bodies will be like and how that might function when the resurrection comes.
I'm going to say my guess is we'll all be 33.
33.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What we were when we were.
Was that when you were in your prime?
Is that your prime?
Yeah, I would say that.
Or is that like a Jesus reference there?
It's both.
Okay.
Because like you go back to your age when you were 33. Did you like it? Like your physicality of 33.
I think I'm not there.
You're not there yet.
But I was definitely in better shape when I was in my 20s than now.
Well, then you better work on it, because
I know.
whatever you are when you're 33 is what you're going to be.
That's what I'm going to be.
Yeah, I was actually stronger in my 30s than my 20s.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And you weren't even working out with Mike then.
No, I wasn't working out with Mike. Mike and I have not worked out in like 4 weeks. Shout out to Mike if you're listening here today, brother.
I haven't seen him forever.
Yeah, he's pinch hitting. He's doing some help for a worship director out at Crosspoint. Her name's Audrey Coyne. And can I just say, I won that bet.
That's
I was in their pool.
I don't know.
We had a birthing bet.
I heard about the bet.
It was the first baby. They had a pool going. And I mean, Audrey was ready to burst. I swear, at like 6 months, how she went full term and beyond is like anyone's guess. That poor girl. And so she was given up to April 27th, on which day they were going to induce her with like a 5:30 a.m. appointment. Well, I got 100-1 odds on April 28th. So I'm taking the big money here. I'm betting on April 28th. And I prayed hard about that. And her labor lasted 22 hours. Thanks be to God, because I won. And
so what are you going to spend it on?
Just, I haven't even
donation
thought about that yet, because 100-1 odds on a $0 bet really doesn't get you a lot. So no money changed hands on that one. Unfortunately.
Yeah, that is very true.
Yeah
21 hours, that is not, it didn't sound like fun at all.
I bet it went quick.
No, I don't envy that. Yeah.
You bet it went quick.
All right, we're top of the hour here. Kent, you want to give us the station break shout out?
I can. You're listening to 21.6 The Net. This is Questions You Never Thought You Could Ask in Church. If you've got questions that, you just never thought you could ask in church, text them in to 815-314-0363, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's always open. You'll never get a busy signal with that text. Busy signals, Andrew, there used to be phones. And anyway, I digress.
I remember that. Yeah.
Hang up, dial again.
That's right. Every Wednesday live at 12:30 p.m. Central right here on the net. You can catch them, follow, subscribe to their YouTube channel, to their Facebook, and or go out to your favorite podcast platform, because after each show, it becomes a podcast. So it's out there. And of course, Sundays from 10 to whenever, about 5 to 10 now, I guess, right? Ish is when we go live for pregame. And so you can tune in live for the worship hour and just praise Jesus all day on Sunday. It's good stuff.
The worship hour, sometimes hour and a half.
Well, whatever. Last Sunday, it was a long one.
No.
I think I could beat that. I think I could do 2.
I didn't notice it was really long till my feet fell asleep.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
I'm ready to stand for the entire service. There were people passing out. We said nope.
Yeah,
no
ordering pizza.
Press on. Actually, I loved it, and I loved the the monster.
Frankenberry.
Yeah. The Frankenberry.
I'm with
what's
you.
up with that?
It was Frankenberry and quick, Nestle, the strawberry.
Oh, totally.
Strawberry quick.
And we're not the only ones. So Steve Fromm said the same thing. So this was not just me.
No, I preferred Frankenberry.
Yes.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
By the way, going to the comments here, Gene, you've mentioned this twice now. Don't forget the 77s. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Is that a band?
I don't know.
I'm guessing.
I'm lost on that one too. Help us out, Gene. Clarify in the comments. We'd love to know what you're talking about here. Thanks.
Kelly says she would go to the University of Gadini.
All right. So maybe Ben. But we got Kelly. All right, Kelly.
We got a couple.
I'm with you. All right. Let's talk.
On board
let's
now.
talk.
Since we're talking about Jesus age like 33, there's one about do the numbers mentioned again and again in the Bible, 3, 7, 12, 1,000, etc., have any real significance for our salvation, or is it just supposed to be something cool we note?
No, good question. Good question. No, you do not need to know the numeric significance of numbers in the Bible for your salvation. In fact, you don't have to know most of what's in the Bible for your salvation. Salvation is a free gift that comes from God through what Christ did for you, not through some secret knowledge that you gain or some special insight that you have. Anyone, as the Bible will put it, that calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Anyone who just throws themselves on God's mercy because of what Christ has done for them will be saved. Is it just something cool to note? It is something cool to note. But the significance of knowing maybe what some of these numbers of the Bible means, and I'm betting this is a follow-up to some of the numeric questions we've had in the past, is it's getting at what the author wants us to know. That's always the fundamental drive in anything in biblical interpretation. It's not about getting secret esoteric wisdom. It's like, this guy is writing. There's something here of value. What does he mean? What's he saying? And that's what knowing some of these numerological significances to some of these numbers can help you with.
I almost view them as like catchphrases.
Yeah, a little bit.
It like grabs your attention as like, okay, pay attention to this, because in the time period there, those were significant numbers. I think not only biblically, but maybe in society as well.
And you can drop the number without having to write a paragraph.
Yeah.
Because it implies something, right?
And go back to your childhood. Andrew probably didn't ever experience this, but Kent and I and Dave probably did. Remember the Tony the Tiger decoder ring?
Decoder ring.
Yeah. So I've
heard about it.
You would get this in your box of Frosted Flakes, and then you would go through this message, and then you would decode something and it'd give you another message. I don't think God gave us that in the Bible. There's not any included in there. So like to say that there's something hidden in the Bible that is just not meant for us to understand without something else to try and figure that out, I just don't think
it's not the intent. Right. It's looking to communicate to the people who would understand what is being communicated.
Hidden messages, it's
right.
Like,
right.
Well, that's what happens if you take the Message Bible and you turn it upside down.
Oh,
and you read it with the decoder,
and you put it
and
on
then backmask it.
Yes.
There's the secret. There's the
All
secret
right.
messages.
All right.
They're tucked away in there. Did rainbows exist before the flood, or did God create them specifically after the flood as a visual sign of his covenant?
I like that question.
Yeah, it's a good one. Thank you. Maybe is the answer I have to give there. The implication, I think, or the inference behind the question is that it did not rain before the flood, that rain was something new. And if it did not rain before the flood, then there obviously wouldn't be rainbows. All right. So the question you really have to ask is, did it rain before the flood? And that is not as answerable as you would think. It does talk about how the water would kind of come up and like water the earth in Genesis 3, but I don't think you can push that to such a degree to mean that it absolutely indicates or implies that it did not rain before the flood either. So you got to make a couple of interpretive leaps to get there. But I know like the Creation Research Institute and some others have delved heavily into this, and I love reading their stuff. I find it fascinating. And they've explored some different models of the beginnings of the earth that would suggest those kinds of things. What Genesis 9 does say, though, and this is matter of fact, is whether the rainbow was there before or not, it certainly was used by God to be a sign of a promise he made never to wipe out humanity in that manner again. And that leads us to something in the discussion of signs, because sometimes God will give a sign and it's something new and fantastic and wonderful and unexpected and kind of like just beyond our wildest imagination. But oftentimes when God gives signs and the Bible talks about signs, it takes very everyday normal events, even if they're big events, and attaches to them a meaning so that when we come across it, it's supposed to prompt us to think in a certain way. Take something like the Lord's Supper, right? It's normal bread, it's normal wine. Well, it's not normal bread anymore. It's unleavened bread. It's a normal pancake, right? And normal wine. There's nothing special about the ingredients or like somehow these ingredients didn't exist before, but a meaning is attached to it. If I see a stop sign, the metal is not special. It's just metal, but it now triggers me to think and remember in a different way. And the rainbow could have been that. Beyond that, yeah, it's playing with different models and speculations, which is great stuff. And it's a lot of fun to think about, but I don't think you can be hardcore on either side of that.
Well, and I never thought about it in that way of, because, rainbows are a phenomenon that happen due to sciencey stuff. So it's like
that's how you see it actually written in like meteorological textbooks
exactly.
too. It's like due to science. In order for
a rainbow to never have happened, that would be that it means that it never had rained before. Because it's like I don't know that rainbows were created in that moment, because you have to change how science works to make it not happen.
God has remanipulated physics to a new model or something, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sure there's other science people that know slightly more.
So if you know sciencey stuff, Andrew is like looking for your text today.
And water and separation, and I don't understand. But there's no pot of gold at the end. That's all I know.
Yeah, because I've gone looking. Have you?
Yeah, I've been to the end of the rainbow.
Yeah,
there's no pot of gold.
Where's the gold? Yeah,
they're actually circular, which
Yeah.
They are.
Shut up. I'm winning on all fronts today during this podcast. Does Christianity today need denominations or not?
Great question. Thank you. I think of even the conversations we had last week with Chris about this. Fundamentally, God does not want denominationalism. I think particularly as it has come to be or as it exists today. A very prime call that you will find, especially in the New Testament, is to unity. Paul's letters especially are obsessed with trying to take fragmented churches that are often polarized, fighting against each other, or just kind of like cats, just everyone's wandering around doing their own thing, trying to call them back to unity. Jesus himself prays for this in John 17, and elsewhere you'll see him talk about it. So there is always, or should always be, this goal to a certain sense of oneness in the body of Christ. Now, from there, we have to ask some questions of then what the denomination exists for and why it might still be important. Because simultaneously, within this call to unity, it is not unity at all cost. It's not the idea that truth needs to be jettisoned in order to have unity, or certain things shouldn't be talked about in order to preserve unity, or that we just need to pretend that certain things don't matter so that we don't in any way risk breaking this fragile unity that's there. In fact, Paul will speak very oppositely to this, going, there are times when it is right to break unity with someone, and particularly you'll see this, and Jesus too will talk this way, over unrepentant sin, over false teaching, over a stubbornness and refusal of some kind to get along with the body, things like this. There's other examples, and Jesus will say, treat him like a pagan or tax collector, which means you love them, you witness to them, but you don't treat them as part of the body anymore, if you will. You'll see Paul say the same thing about, quote, expel the immoral brother over something in 1 Corinthians 6 that I won't go down the rabbit trail on right now. So sometimes denominationalism does exist, particularly because of truth that matters that's at stake. And sometimes there are differences over this that people have had to separate over. And sometimes the cost of that separation is more worthwhile than what would be at stake otherwise. Maybe by analogy, sometimes a divorce is preferable to staying in a toxic relationship because it has become so damaged, broken, and abusive. And it's not that we're glorifying divorce, nor is it that this is something that we wish for or want for, but sometimes it is, shall we say, the lesser of two evils. And so there's a place for that. But I want to nuance it another way, because I think, in my opinion, that a lot of the hard and rigid denominational differences that have existed among Christians, or were held to be so important among Christians in a previous generation or two, are not nearly as important to Christians today. I think of our own church at Fellowship of Faith. Most people are not coming because it's a Lutheran church. Most people are coming because there is a core basis of foundational Christian teaching that nearly any Christian would agree to, but they've connected because of the style, the variety, the approach, the philosophy, and dare I say, even the emphasis that we place there on certain things over another. Well, I think it's amazing that there's variety in the body of Christ. I don't think that there's one church that can meet all people's needs, or if I can nuance that differently, that can be all things to all people. Every church should, of course, meet the need of bringing the message of Jesus and the call to salvation and the call to a holy life. But within that, we have different personalities and will gravitate differently. So I think in that arena, denominationalism can be healthy and good, so long as all of us who are of different tribes in the body of Christ aren't sniping at each other, but rather looking to build each other up. Strive for unity with each other, even if we don't worship under the same organizational structure. And truly, I mean this, argue and debate our differences, but in a way to better each other and lift each other up rather than destroy each other. The way that teachers, pastors and churches of other denominations have sharpened me in my own faith and helped me to see it more clearly has been amazing. And I would not have nearly the same relationship I have with God today if it wasn't for those people challenging me along the way with the emphases they bring. So it's a more nuanced question than just a yes or no here on, or is it needed or not? Yeah.
Yeah, I think between most denominations, Christian denominations, it's, 95 to 98% the same across most of these denominations. It's those small percentages of things that we differ on, but those seem to define the way that we interact. Yeah, we get hung up between those. It's like, why can't we celebrate the 95% of stuff that we all agree on? And I think come together around that in order to have a bigger impact. Then it's like, well, we can't do that with them because they think this or they believe this. It's like,
yeah. Since the earliest centuries of the Christian church, there have been what have been called creeds. And today there are what are labeled 3 ecumenical creeds, which means believed by all Christians. The Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, the Athanasian Creed. No one knows that one, but it's worth your time reading as well. And it's funny that whether your church says them on a Sunday or not isn't the point here. You can look at any statement of faith by any Christian, Protestant, Catholic, or Orthodox, and they will fundamentally agree with what is in those 3 creeds. And that was always the defining mark in the early church of who was a Christian and who wasn't. There is a sense that what you believe is important, and there are certain beliefs that are non-negotiables. Those were always held as the non-negotiables. The rest we can differ on. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean they're not important. It doesn't mean they don't matter. They do. But it doesn't make us enemies.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't give credence to tearing other churches or other denominations down specifically for those reasons.
Yeah.
So there's one here. I read once that not trusting in God and unrepentant sin is the cause of mental illnesses such as anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia. Is that true?
The knee-jerk reaction is to say, no, it's not true. I'm going to answer it this way. It can be true. It can be a reason, but it is not the reason. There are a lot of people who struggle with mental illness, anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar. We can just keep adding to the list here, right? That has nothing to do with trusting God or not trusting God, repentant or unrepentant sin. Sometimes it is just simply the effect of living in a fallen world. Sometimes it is the effect of living with mortal human bodies that are not the perfected body God originally designed, that are tainted by sin. Not like somehow I did this and therefore I'm being punished for it, but just, we die, we decay. Our bodies don't function the way that they're supposed to. Sometimes it's purely that. However, within it, and let me talk to things like anxiety and depression, trust in God can be an incredible therapy to working through it. It doesn't make it magically go away. It doesn't mean, if I believe in Jesus, suddenly I'm not depressed anymore. No, far from it. In fact, some of the most holy, amazing, intimately related people to God throughout human history have struggled with darkness, depression, anxiety, and other things in terrible ways. But in it, just like in our physical pain, we can turn to God. We can find hope in God. We can find faith in God. We can find something beyond this in the hope that God has for a resurrection and restoration to come when we're no longer afflicted. Many times we have to carry our cross now with these things. And I should say this, but sometimes I have seen this a lot. Unrepentant sin, the guilt over sin, unacknowledged sin tears people up from the inside out and can lead to some of these things that we label mental afflictions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, but like the unrepentant sin part, I think a lot of that too comes from the nature of most churches, and that there's the shame aspect with it of, I can't talk about this at church because then I'll get shunned or whatever. So that leads to then you internalizing it and leading to some of that like mental distress. So I think a lot of it is like, it's not that I don't really want to talk about this or I don't want to share this, but like I'm worried about what people's reactions are going to be. And I think that is the opposite of what the church should be. Like, in my opinion, like it shouldn't be a place where I'm afraid to talk about these things or I'm scared about it.
You shouldn't have to select who you're going to go talk to about it in the church. Is my point. Like, if you're part of a church body, and we're going through this right now in Corinthians, right? And it's like, we are part of a whole, right? So therefore, if you have something you want to say, I have something I want to say, I should be, not that they're going to have the wisdom necessarily, but I shouldn't feel like I have to keep things from the people that are in my body that I'm worshiping with in my church. And I think that's your point.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to, well, you know what? I trust Andrew more than I do taking this to Kent, because Kent's going to laugh at me over there, because of what I'm saying. Right, Ken? Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine if someone had cancer and walked into the church and went, I have to hide this? Some people do,
You're right.
By the way. But going, I have to hide this because I'm going to be judged or shunned because I have cancer. I mean, it's almost laughable because it's so absurd to hear, despite the fact that I know that does occur in certain, not just churches, families, organizations, groupings of people. But I think most of us hear that and go, so why would mental illness be that way? And if you're someone who's living
sin
with mental affliction, illness, whatever it might be, find a church where it's a place that you can process it, you can live with it, you can seek God in the midst of it. People will love you regardless of it, and you can heal through it openly. I love what Jesus talks about all the time, about how when we bring things in the darkness into the light, where sin often loses much of its power, but the rest of the things that we afflict ourselves with lose its power too. Not completely all the time. Doesn't mean it'll magically go away, but you no longer have to suffer silently.
Yeah. And I think sometimes there's the idea in people's head within the church, within Christianity, that if you're dealing with some of those mental illnesses, that means that you're not trusting God enough, or you don't have enough faith. And it's like those two things I don't think are correlated.
It's like saying if you're poor, you're not trusting God enough. If you're, physically, disabled or sick, you're not trusting God. No, Jesus would have the harshest words to say against that.
Let's jump here to, after Jesus died on the cross, where did he go?
Where did he go?
And I don't remember if we talked about this already or if I've just read this question before, but in the creed we say he descended into hell, but in Luke he tells the thief on the cross, truly I tell you today, you will be with me in paradise. So he's saying today you'll be with me in paradise, but also it's saying that today he descended into hell. So kind of what's the deal there? Yeah.
So where did Jesus go? My initial snarky answer was, well, he went into the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea that was never used before, that was nearby, that he laid him in. And I'm only halfway being snarky about that, because that is where he went. You're not just a soul, you're also a body. But to talk about that dichotomy between today you'll be with me in paradise versus descended into hell. When we talk about hell, my bet is that most of us, our minds jump to like a place of fire and brimstone and torture and punishment and eternal torment, that we get out of Dante's Inferno or something like that. So we had a question on biblical languages earlier. They are important. They help bring clarity to things or help us see in higher def and keep us off wrong paths. The Greek word in both the Apostles' Creed and many times in the New Testament that gets translated hell is Hades. And it's the same Hades that you would think about in Greek mythology or whatever it might be. And it's only one of the terms used, but that is the word that's used in the Apostles' Creed. Let's keep it there. Does that mean to imply that Greek mythology is true and Jesus went to be with like Pluto, or the god Hades down in the underworld and Persephone was maybe there half the year or something? No, that's misappropriating what he's doing, because it was the common conceptual word used in Jesus' day to talk about the realm of the dead. Everyone in Greek mythology, when they died, went to the realm of the dead. You're dead. You're not here anymore. You go to the realm of the dead. So where did Jesus' soul go? Well, Jesus' soul goes where dead people's souls go. And it doesn't bring a lot more definition than that. 1 Peter 3 will comment on how he went down to the spirits who were in prison to proclaim to them his victory. And you can read that on your own. we need to distance ourselves from any idea that when Jesus descended into hell, what it indicates is that he had to go be punished, tortured, or suffer in a place of eternal torment. We're left with one of two interpretive options. The Catholic Lutheran perspective has often gone one way with it. The Reformed perspective has often gone another way with it. And you will see it in how they translate the Apostles' Creed. Lutheran Catholic perspective, it preserves the word hell. And it's the idea that Jesus, at least for part of that time, descended into hell the way that a conquering army would go into the capital city of its enemy to raise its flag and proclaim victory. Okay, that's what Jesus did in what we traditionally think of as hell. But the Reformed tradition will often go nuance it a different way. And it's not it has to be one or the other. But they'll translate it grave, emphasizing more that Jesus died. It's meant to show that Jesus died. He's dead. He's actually in the grave. His body is there. That Jesus went to the place where dead people go, which would not preclude time by his Father in heaven.
So it's basically just saying he died and rose.
You got it. It's an emphasis point, and it's emphasis point against early Christian heresies that were claiming Jesus didn't actually die. Because if Jesus is God, how can God die? See, the issue today is most people have a problem with Jesus' divinity. They're all about Jesus' humanity. That wasn't the case in the early world. In the early world, it was, of course, Jesus is divine. How could he be human? And these things were written into the creed to emphasize the true humanity and death of the God-made man.
Yeah, so let's go to the comment section real quick. Good morning from Singapore. Good morning.
All right.
Yeah,
all right, Singapore. Thanks
here.
for joining today.
Basically, I think it's a comment from an earlier conversation. It's human nature for tribalism in both thoughts and actions. It's inevitable that that will happen even in religion.
Yeah,
so,
wherever you have people, it's going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Rachel says, hi, guys, referencing a question from earlier. Aging is not the same as decaying, right?
You got it. You got it. As every 10-year-old knows, who as they age, they get stronger and more vital, so to speak. Yeah. And not vital like importance, but like filled with vitality.
She says, just curious. They're kind of synonymous in my head. But I do understand your Lord of the Rings reference.
Well, that's the important part, right? This, so
as long as you get that.
So we're good, Rachel. Thank you for commenting here today. All right.
You got one here. Let's see. We've only got a few minutes left. I'm trying to find one that
you think will be 30 seconds, but it'll be like 25. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Favorite passage in the New Testament and why?
Oh man, I don't have one. It depends on time of life. It depends on what I'm going through. It depends on what I'm thinking about. I mean, there's classic passages you always run back to for me. John 3, Romans 8, the entire book of Colossians, Revelation 2 is one for me. That there's a number that I can kind of
anything in
out.
James. Love James.
Yeah, you're a James guy. That's right.
James.
That's right.
John 21:6.
John 21:6. Yeah.
Is that your life verse?
Is that where we get the 21:6?
There it is. 21:6.
Ken, you want to give it to us today?
That's it. I can't. You're the memorizer, right? I just know this is when they were out.
Let's do the Kent Jones
translation.
Yeah. What do you think?
When I quote the Bible, I say it's somewhere between Genesis and Revelation. It sounds something like this.
And Jesus will do the rest.
That's it. That's it. They were out fishing all night, didn't catch anything. Yeah. Throw the net on the right side of the boat. It filled it up.
For our word for word folk, this is the NIV. He said, throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish.
There you go.
Well done, Kent.
And that is why you're stuck in the net.
Yes.
There you go. So is that a comment on right versus left? Like the left side of the boat is wrong. Left-handed people are wrong.
Yeah,
get your politics in there,
that would
didn't
be
you?
a misappropriation. What about you guys? Kind of similar sounding.
It's a pet peeve of mine, especially when you go to work for a church and they say, well, why don't you give us your life verse and we can put it on the website for you.
We have that on our website.
I know.
We do. We do.
Yeah.
But mine's an Old Testament one up there.
Mine is.
There you go.
I don't even know which one I gave you. I
can't remember this up. Yeah.
I can't remember who even asked me for it.
Yeah. What's yours, Andrew?
Mine up there is Romans 8, 28 or 23. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord.
Okay, so that's Romans 6.
Romans 6. That's
is that the one?
6,
it is? All right. All right.
Mine's probably
Romans 6:23.
There
you got it.
It was my confirmation verse. But even at that time, it was like, here's a list of verses you can choose from. And I was like, that one.
So we've got it right here. And we should get a poll going on this.
Is it?
It is. How do you know? Search my heart.
Did you write that song?
Bless your soul.
Bless you, honey.
Post your guess or text in your guess for Steve Wells, and if you get this on the head, there's got to be something that comes around.
You'll get all
of
Dave's winnings from his bet.
You get all the winnings from that bet. Yeah, there you go.
Dave's,
right, or something.
We'll give you the last 3 episodes
Jesus
for free.
Wept.
Well, hey guys, we hit 1:30 here today. We are out of time. We want to thank you for listening, for tuning in today. This is Questions You Never Thought You Could Ask in Church. We got through a lot of questions today, but we didn't get through them all. And if you do have questions about God, life, Christianity, the Bible, Jesus, spirituality, how it all intersects, text them in to 815-314-0363. Again, that's 815-314-0363. Your questions are important to us. We didn't get them today. They are in the hopper. They are waiting. We go live every Wednesday afternoon at 12:30 p.m. Central Time. But if you miss us live, catch us in recording. Go to your favorite podcast provider. Just search Questions You Never Thought You Could Ask in Church, Spotify, Apple, you name it, it'll be there. Or visit us at fellowshipoffaith.org and go to the FOF Plus page. You'll be set there as well. Hey, don't forget, God loves you. Jesus died for you. You can have new life in him. Thanks for listening. God bless everyone. Take care.